Chapter 12, Part 1. Jazz kept one hand on the kid as they walked up the stairs under the dirty fluorescent bulb. She could only imagine what Iona must be thinking as they shepherded her to the top. They came out on the roof into slanting afternoon sunlight. Jazz gave Iona's shoulder a little squeeze. See, there's the garden. She nodded toward a potted palm and three wooden barrels with miscellaneous wilted leaves in them. Iona glanced that way, then gave Jazz a sober look. They're not getting enough water, she said as quietly as she said everything. Yeah, well, it didn't rain enough this summer, Morgan said. You want to fix that? Iona just looked seriously at him. Look, what I mean is, you got the power, right? So if you just want to show us right now anything you want, be my guest. It'll make things a lot simpler. Make it rain, why don't you? Iona looked right at him. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just saying that there's no reason for you to get hurt here. We just want to see you do something like what you did the night of the fire. Anything. Just show us. Jess watched him. There was something in, incongruous about the scene. Morgan in his high boots and leather jacket, iron muscled, sleek Suwannee on one knee in front of this harmless looking kid in pink pants. And the kid just looking back at him with her sad and distant eyes. I guess you're crazy, Iona said softly. Her pigtails moved as she shook her head. A pink ribbon fluttered loosely. Do you remember the fire? Jazz said from behind her. Course, the kid turned slowly around. I was scared, but you didn't get hurt. The fire got close to you, and then you did something, and then the fire went away. I was scared, and then the fire went away, but I didn't do anything. Okay, Morgan said. He stood. Maybe if you can't tell us, you can show us. Before Jazz could say anything, he was picking the little girl up and carrying her. He had to step over a line of debris that stretched like a diagonal wall from one side of the roof to the other. It was composed of telephone books, splintery logs, old clothes, and other odds and ends, and it formed a barrier, blocking off a corner of the roof from the rest. He put Iona in the triangle beyond the debris. Then he stepped back over the wall, leaving her there. Iona didn't say anything, didn't try to follow him back out of the triangle. Jazz stood tensely. The kid's a wild power, she told herself. She's already survived worse than this, and no matter what happens, she's not going to get hurt. I promised her that. But she would have liked to be telepathic again just for a few minutes, just to tell the kid one more time not to be scared. She especially wanted to as Belle and Raven poured gasoline on the wall of debris. Iona watched them do it with huge sober eyes, still not moving. Then Pierce lit a match. The flames leaped up yellow and blue, not the bright orange they would have been at night, but hot. They spread fast and Jazz could feel the heat from where she was standing, 10 feet away. The kid was closer. She still didn't say anything, didn't try to jump over the flames while they were low. In a few moments they were high enough that she couldn't jump through them without setting herself on fire. Okay, Jazz thought, knowing the kid couldn't hear her. Now, do it. Come on, Iona. Put the fire out. Iona just looked at it. She was standing absolutely still, with her little hands curled into fists at her sides. A small and lonely figure, with the late afternoon sun making a soft red halo around her head, and the hot wind from the fire rippling her pink trimmed shirt. She faced the flames dead on, but not aggressively, not as if she were planning to fight them. Damn, this is wrong, Jazz thought. Her own hands were clenched into fists so tightly that her nails were biting into her palms. You know, I'm concerned, Pierce said softly from just behind her. I have a concern here. Jazz glanced at him quickly. Pierce didn't talk a lot, and he always seemed the coldest of the group, aside from Morgan. Of course, who could be colder than anyone? Now Jazz wondered, could he, who never seemed to be moved by pity, actually be the most sensitive? I'm worried about this fire. I know nobody can look down on us, but it's making a lot of smoke. What if one of the other tenants comes up to investigate? Jazz almost hit him. This is not my home, she thought, and felt the part of her that had sighed and felt loved and understood wither away. These are not my people. I don't belong with them. And Pierce wasn't worth hitting. She turned her back on him to look at Iona again. She was dimly aware of Morgan telling him to shut up, that the other tenants were the least of their worries. But most of her attention was focused on the kid. Come on, kid, she thought. Then she said it loud. Come on, Iona. Put out the fire. You can do it. Just do what you did before. She tried to catch the child's eye, but Iona was looking at the flames. She seemed to be trembling now. Yeah, come on, Morgan said briskly. Let's get this over with, kid. Raven leaned forward, her long front hair ruffling in the wind. Do you remember what you did that night? She shouted seriously. Think. Iona looked at her and spoke for the first time. I didn't do anything. Her voice, so composed before, was edging on tears. The fire was full blown now, loud as a roaring wind, sending little bits of burning debris into the air. One floated down to rest at Iona's feet, and she stepped backward. She's got to be scared, Jess told herself. That's the whole point of this test. If she's not scared, she'll never be able to find her power. And we're talking about saving the world here. We're not just torturing this kid for fun. It's still wrong. The thought burst out from some deep part of her. Jazz had seen a lot of horrible things as a vampire and a vampire hunter, but suddenly she knew she couldn't watch any more of this. I'm going to call it off. She looked at Morgan. He was standing tensely, arms folded over his chest, green eyes fixed on Iona, as if he could will her into doing what he wanted. Raven and Belle were beside him, Raven expressionless under her fall of dark hair, Belle frowning with his big hands on his hips. This was a step or so behind them. It's time to stop, Jazz said. Morgan's head whipped around to look at her. No, we've gotten this far. It would be stupid to have to start all over again. Would that be any nicer to her? I said it's time to stop. What do you have to put out the fire? Or did you even think of that? As they were talking, Thistle stepped forward. She moved right up to the flames, staring at Iona. You better do something fast, she shouted, or you're going to burn right up. The childish, taunting tone caught Jazz's attention, but Morgan was talking to her. She's going to put it out any minute now. She just has to be frightened enough. Morgan, she's absolutely terrified already. Look at her. Morgan turned. Iona's clenched fists were now raised to chest level. Her mouth was slightly open as she breathed far too fast. And although she wasn't screaming or crying like a normal kid, Jazz could see the tremors running through her little body. She looked like a small trapped animal. If she's not doing it now, she's never going to, Jazz told Morgan back flatly. It was a stupid idea in the first place, and it's over. She saw the change in his green eyes, the flare of anger, and then the sudden darkness of defeat. She realized that he was going to cave. But before he could say anything, Thistle moved forward. You're going to die, she shrilled. You're going to burn right up. You're going to burn right now, and she began kicking flaming debris at Iona. Everything happened very fast after that. The debris came apart in a shower of sparks as it flew toward Iona. Iona's mouth came open in horror as she found fiery garbage swirling around her knees. And then Raven was yelling at Thistle, but Thistle was already kicking more. A second deluge of sparks hit Iona. Jazz saw her put up her hands to protect her face. then flung her arms out as a piece of burning cloth settled on her sleeve. She saw the sleeve spurt with a tiny flame. She saw Iona cast a frantic look around, searching for a way to escape. Morgan was dragging Thistle back by her collar. Thistle was still kicking. Sparks were everywhere, and Jazz felt a hot pain on her cheek. And then Iona's eyes went enormous and blank and fixed, and Jazz could see that she'd made some decision. She'd found some way to get out of this, only not the right one. She was going to jump. Jazz saw Iona turn toward the edge of the roof, and she knew in that same instant that she couldn't get to the child in time to stop her. So there was only one thing to do. Jazz only hoped she would be fast enough. She very nearly wasn't, but there was a 2-foot wall at the roof's perimeter, and it delayed Iona for a second as she scrambled onto it. That gave Jazz a second to leap through the fire and catch up. And then Iona was on the wall, and then she was launching her body into empty space. She jumped like a flying squirrel, arms and legs outspread, looking down at the 3-story drop. Jazz jumped with her. Jazz! The telepathic shout followed her, but Jazz scarcely heard it. She had no idea who had even said it. Her entire consciousness was focused on Iona. Maybe some part of her was still hoping that the kid had magic and could make the wind hold her up, but it didn't happen, and Jazz didn't waste time thinking about it. She hit Iona in midair, grabbing her small body and hanging on. It was something no human could have done. Jazz vampire muscles instinctively knew how to handle this, though. They twisted her as she fell, putting her underneath the child in her arms, putting her legs below her like a cat's. But of course, Jazz didn't have a vampire resistance to injury. She knew perfectly well that when she hit, the fall would break both her legs. In her weakened state, it might well kill her. It should it should save the kid though, she thought unemotionally as the ground rushed up to meet her. The extra resiliency of Jazz's flesh would act as a cushion. But there was one thing Jazz hadn't thought of: the trees. There were discouraged looking rudbud trees planted at regular intervals along the cracked and mossy sidewalk. None of them had too much in the way of foliage, even in late summer, but they certainly had a lot of little branches. Jazz and the kid crashed right into one of them. Jazz felt pain, but scratching, stabbing pain instead of slamming agony of hitting the sidewalk. Her legs were smashing through things that cracked and snapped and poked her. Twigs and branches. She was being flipped around as some of the twigs caught on her jeans and others snagged her leather jacket. Every branch she hit decreased her velocity. So when she finally crashed out of the tree and hit concrete, it merely knocked the wind out of her. Black dots danced in front of her eyes. Then her vision cleared and she realized that she was lying on her back with Iona clutched to her stomach. Shiny red bud leaves were floating down all around her. Got it, she thought. We made it. I don't believe it. The end of chapter 12, part 1. Chapter 12, part 2 is coming shortly.